Leora Mayfield froze in the hallway the moment she heard her aunt's voice. She hadn't meant to listen, but Caroline's sharp tone cut through the quiet house like a knife. Leora leaned closer, her heart pounding, and heard her aunt say the words that made her chest tighten, "She's nothing but a burden. I'll make sure she never sees a penny from her parents." For a moment, Leora thought she misheard. But Caroline continued, sounding angry, almost hateful, as if Leora had done something unforgivable. Leora felt a sting behind her eyes, not from the words alone, but from the truth inside them. Things suddenly made sense, the cold looks, the constant chores, the way Caroline acted sweet only when others were around. Leora realized none of it was accidental. Her aunt didn't just dislike her. She wanted something, and whatever it wasn't good. Leora stepped back quietly, trying not to make a sound. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to breathe slowly. She knew she couldn't confront Caroline. Not yet. She had no idea how deep her aunt's plans went, and she was scared to find out. But for the first time, she understood she wasn't imagining things. She wasn't being too sensitive, like Caroline always said. She was being targeted. She walked to her room, closed the door softly, and sat on the edge of her bed. Her hands shook, but her mind was strangely clear. She didn't know how or when, but something inside her shifted. If her aunt wanted to strip away what was left of her life, Leora knew she had to stay quiet, observe, and wait. Caroline thought she had everything under control, but fate had a way of turning on people like her. And Leora sensed that something was already beginning to change. Leora's life had been quiet before everything changed. She used to live in a small house filled with warmth, laughter, and the steady comfort of her parents' voices. They weren't rich, but they were happy, and Leora never felt alone. That all ended the night the police came to her door. She remembered the soft knock, the worried faces, and the words that didn't make sense at first. A car accident. No survivors. Just like that, the world she knew was gone. After the funeral, people kept saying she was fortunate to have a relative who could take her in. Aunt Caroline showed up with a calm smile and soft hands, telling everyone she would treat Leora like her own. Leora wanted to believe her. She needed to believe her. But the moment they reached Caroline's house, something felt off. The warmth from earlier disappeared the second the front door closed. Caroline's voice shifted. Her smile faded. She set strict rules on the very first night, telling Leora where she could stand, what she could touch, and how she should behave. At the funeral, Caroline had hugged her tightly, but now she acted like Leora was an inconvenience she had no choice but to accept. In front of neighbors, Caroline was gentle and kind, patting Leora's shoulder and calling her sweetheart. But inside the house, she grew distant, giving Leora chores that kept her busy from morning to evening. Leora tried not to complain. She didn't want more trouble, and she knew she had nowhere else to go. She kept hoping things would get better. Maybe Caroline just needed time. Maybe grief did strange things to people. But each passing week made the truth harder to ignore. Caroline wasn't trying to be a guardian. She was trying to control everything, especially Leora. After the custody papers were signed, Leora felt the shift almost immediately. Caroline didn't bother hiding her true behavior anymore. The gentle voice she used in public was gone. Now, every morning started with a list of chores so long Leora barely had time to sit down. Cleaning the kitchen, folding laundry, scrubbing the porch, organizing closets, tasks that used to be shared by everyone suddenly became her full responsibility. Whenever Leora tried to finish early to rest or read, Caroline found something else for her to do. If she hesitated, Caroline reminded her that she was living here for free, as if Leora hadn't lost everything already. What hurt more was how she was cut off from people who cared about her. When old friends called the house, Caroline always said Leora was busy or resting, never letting her come to the phone. When someone asked to visit, Caroline claimed it wasn't a good time. Leora slowly stopped hearing from anyone. Meanwhile, Caroline's daughter, Marin, lived a different life entirely. She walked around the house carefree, never lifting a finger. Caroline showered her with new clothes, gadgets, and small luxuries that Leora recognized, things that once belonged to her parents. Jewelry her mother wore. Books her father collected. Even a watch her dad had promised would one day be Leora's now sat proudly on Marin's wrist. Caroline kept reminding her that Marin deserves nice things, while Leora watched the pieces of her old life slip away one by one. Leora tried to stay quiet, hoping doing everything right would make things easier, but it never did. Caroline didn't want help, she wanted control. And the more Leora obeyed, the more Caroline pushed, certain no one would ever question her behavior. Leora never planned to find anything. She was only looking for a roll of tape in Caroline's home office, a room she wasn't supposed to enter unless she was cleaning. But when she opened a lower drawer, a stack of folders slid forward, and one of them had her name on it. Her heart thumped as she pulled it out. She knew she should put it back, but something told her to look. Inside were papers she had never seen before, bank statements, legal letters, and a document with her parents' signatures. As she read the first page, her hands began to shake. Her parents had left behind a trust fund. Not a small one either. It was meant for her education, her future, everything they wanted for her. The money had been protected until she turned 18. But someone was trying to gain control of it early. The next few pages showed requests made to the court, all written by Caroline. The words felt sharp even on paper. Leora is emotionally unstable. Leora needs supervision. Leora cannot manage finances. Lies, all of them. Caroline was slowly building a case to take over the trust legally. And Leora realized the strict rules, the isolation, the constant criticism, none of it was random. It was a plan. The final blow came when she found notes written in Caroline's handwriting, listing steps to prove Leora couldn't care for herself. Little things Caroline had staged, moments she twisted to look like Leora was difficult or careless. Leora felt sick. She understood now why Caroline watched her so closely, why she kept her away from others, why she pushed her until she broke down in private. This wasn't about discipline. It wasn't about grief or stress. Caroline wanted the money, and she was willing to destroy Leora's life to get it. The breaking point came on a day that started completely normal. Leora had been helping in the kitchen when Caroline suddenly asked her to bring a box from the garage. As soon as Leora stepped inside, she noticed tools scattered on the floor, things she hadn't touched. Before she could react, she heard a loud crash behind her. Caroline screamed, calling for help, and when neighbors rushed in, they found Caroline on the ground, holding her arm, shaking her head like she couldn't believe what just happened. "She pushed me," Caroline said breathlessly. She got angry again. Leora stood frozen. "I didn't touch her," she whispered, but Caroline didn't let her speak again. She cried loudly, saying she was scared to be alone with Leora. The neighbors looked at Leora with uncertain eyes, and she knew they believed Caroline. Adults always did. Caroline knew exactly how to act fragile and frightened. The next day at school, Leora was called to the office. Caroline had reported the incident, saying Leora had a violent outburst. Leora was told she had to step back from group activities for safety reasons. Teachers looked at her differently, carefully, like she might snap at any moment. It hurt more than she expected. She tried to explain, but the staff didn't want details, they wanted compliance. That afternoon, Caroline picked her up early, telling the school she needed close supervision. She locked up the garage, the kitchen knives, even the laundry room, claiming it was for everyone's safety. Leora felt the walls closing in around her. It wasn't just strictness anymore. It was a trap. Alone in her room, she replayed everything she had seen in those documents. The lies, the plan, the staged stories. Now this fake incident fit perfectly. Caroline wasn't just controlling her. She was building proof, step by step, to take away her future. Leora finally understood, Caroline wasn't stopping until every part of her life was taken from her. And if Leora didn't find a way to... The appointment was scheduled the day after the incident, and Caroline made it sound like she was doing Leora a favor. But the moment they entered the clinic, Leora felt uneasy. Caroline spoke loudly at the front desk, making sure everyone heard she was there because Leora needed evaluation. Leora kept her head down, wishing the floor would open up. When Dr. Alden Pierce entered the exam room, he greeted her with a calm, steady voice. He didn't rush, didn't force questions, and didn't look at her the way the school staff had. He simply asked how she'd been feeling. Leora answered carefully, aware that Caroline was sitting right behind her, watching every expression. The doctor noticed the bruises on her arms, not fresh ones, but marks from heavy chores. Caroline quickly explained them away, saying Leora was clumsy and reactive. Leora stayed silent, unsure what she was allowed to say. Dr. Pierce didn't interrupt, but his eyes lingered on the marks longer than necessary. When he asked Caroline to step out for a moment so he could check Leora's posture, Caroline hesitated. She warned him that Leora might mislead him. The doctor simply nodded and waited until she stepped outside. As soon as the door closed, he lowered his voice. "Are you safe at home?" he asked gently. Leora froze. The question felt dangerous. She looked toward the door, afraid Caroline might burst in. She didn't answer, but the fear in her eyes said more than words. Dr. Pierce didn't push her. Instead, he wrote a few notes on his chart and told her softly, "You're not in trouble. You're not alone." When the appointment ended, Caroline hurried Leora out, acting irritated that the visit took so long. But Dr. Pierce watched them leave with a thoughtful expression. He didn't believe the story he'd been told. And although he moved carefully, he had already decided to look deeper into whatever was happening behind that closed household door. Leora found the box on a quiet afternoon when Caroline sent her to clean the attic. The space was dusty and crowded, stacked with old suitcases and forgotten holiday decorations. She was moving a pile of blankets when she noticed a small storage box pushed far into a corner. It was different from the others, cleaner, newer, and sealed with a strip of tape her father always used. Her breath caught. She hadn't seen anything of her parents' belongings in months. Curiosity pulled her closer. She opened the box gently, half expecting Caroline to shout her name from downstairs. Inside were papers, envelopes, and a small notebook her mother used to carry. Leora's hands trembled as she pulled out the first envelope. It was addressed to her, written in her mother's handwriting. The letter inside was warm and full of hope, mentioning future plans and the life they wanted for her. It felt like hearing her parents speak again. Underneath the letters were financial papers, bank records and trust documents, but these looked different from the ones she had seen in Caroline's drawer. These were clear, honest, and showed that her parents had carefully prepared a future for her. Near the bottom of the stack, Leora found the most shocking document, a legal form naming a guardian. But it wasn't Caroline. It was someone named Solene Granger, a woman Leora had never met but recognized as a name her mother used to mention in old stories. The papers showed that her parents trusted Solene to care for her if anything happened to them. They had included her address, phone number, and even a note explaining why she was the best choice. Leora felt her chest tighten. If Solene was meant to take her in, then how had Caroline become her guardian? Why hadn't Solene been contacted? As she dug deeper, she found sealed letters her parents had written to Solene, letters that were never mailed. Caroline must have taken them before anyone saw them. Leora sat back, staring at the box, realizing that Caroline sent Leora to the local market one afternoon, rushing her out the door with a list of things to buy. Leora didn't mind the errand, it was one of the few times she could walk outside without Caroline watching her. She kept her head down, moving quickly, hoping to get back before her aunt found a reason to scold her. As she turned a corner near the bakery, she bumped into a woman carrying a bag of groceries. The bag slipped, and a few apples rolled onto the sidewalk. Leora apologized quietly and bent down to help. When she looked up, the woman was staring at her with wide, confused eyes. "Leora," she whispered, almost like she didn't believe what she was seeing. Leora froze. Her name sounded gentle in this woman's voice, familiar in a way she couldn't place. The woman stepped closer, studying her face with a mixture of shock and emotion. I'm Solene Granger, she said softly. I knew your mother. I've been trying to find you. The name hit Leora like a spark. Solene, the guardian her parents had chosen. The name in the letters. The person who was supposed to look after her. Leora felt her throat tighten. Caroline she never told me about you. Solene's expression darkened for a moment, then softened again. She explained that she had tried to reach Leora after the funeral, calling, visiting, sending letters, but Caroline always told her Leora was adjusting or not ready. Eventually, Caroline stopped answering completely. I never stopped looking, Solene said gently. I promised your mother I would be there if anything happened. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to reach you. For the first time in months, someone looked at Leora with genuine concern, not suspicion. Solene asked if she was all right, if she felt safe, if she needed help getting home. Leora hesitated, afraid Caroline might see them together, but something in Solene's calm presence made her feel safe enough to whisper, I need help. Solene didn't push for more. She simply nodded, as if. After their chance meeting, Solene wasted no time. She contacted an attorney she trusted, explaining the situation carefully, keeping Leora's safety in mind. The attorney immediately understood the seriousness of the case. Caroline had taken control of Leora's life illegally, hidden documents, and manipulated the court. It wasn't just unfair, it was a legal violation. While Solene and the attorney started quietly gathering evidence, Leora stayed calm at home, acting as if nothing had changed. She smiled when Caroline spoke, completed her chores without complaint, and kept her head down. Caroline had no idea that Leora now had an ally outside the house, and that the legal team was quietly building a case against her. The attorney advised Solene to collect everything carefully, copies of the letters, financial statements, and the legal documents Leora had found in the attic. They also made notes of Caroline's behavior, the staged incidents, and witnesses who could confirm neglect. Each small piece was another thread in the web that could trap Caroline. At the same time, Leora learned how to move around the house without drawing attention. She pretended to be obedient, careful never to speak about the attic box or the trust documents. Caroline continued with her usual control, thinking she had everything under her thumb. She didn't notice that every lie, every staged outburst, and every attempt to isolate Leora was being recorded, remembered, and quietly documented. Leora felt a strange mix of fear and hope. She couldn't confront Caroline yet, but she could watch. Every harsh word, every unfair demand, every act of cruelty was giving Solene and the attorney the proof they needed. For the first time, Leora realized that Caroline's power wasn't absolute. Her aunt's control was strong, but it wasn't unbreakable, and the cracks had already begun to show. The day of the court review, Leora sat quietly in the back of the courtroom, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She felt a mixture of fear and relief, knowing that today could change everything. Caroline arrived first, dressed neatly, her smile practiced and polite. She waved at the judge as if nothing was wrong, completely unaware of what was coming. Soon after, Solene entered, followed by the attorney and Dr. Pierce. Each carried folders thick with documents, evidence of years of manipulation, neglect, and lies. Leora's heart raced as the attorney handed the first set to the judge. One by one, the stories unfolded. The letters from her parents, the financial statements, the trust documents, and notes on Caroline's staged incidents were all laid bare. Dr. Pierce spoke calmly about the medical neglect he had observed, describing the bruises and signs of overwork he had seen during his checkup. The attorney detailed the legal violations, the false claims, and the steps Caroline had taken to block Leora from the guardian her parents had chosen. Each piece of evidence was precise, leaving no room for Caroline to twist the story. Caroline's face changed as the evidence was presented. Her confident, controlled demeanor faltered. She tried to interject, tried to explain, but the judge remained firm. Witnesses confirmed what Leora had lived through, the isolation, the chores, the unfair treatment of Marin versus Leora. The courtroom watched as her lies unraveled, her carefully constructed image collapsing in front of everyone. When the hearing ended, the judge looked directly at Caroline, noting that her actions had endangered Leora and violated her parents' wishes. For the first time, Leora felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The truth was clear. Her aunt could no longer hide behind smiles and excuses. Justice had arrived, and Leora finally felt that safety and hope were possible. The courtroom was silent as the judge spoke, his voice steady and final. Caroline's expression froze when he announced that she was stripped of guardianship over Leora immediately. The judge explained that her actions had violated the trust of Leora's parents and endangered the girl's well-being. He added that an investigation into fraud and financial manipulation would be opened, and that Caroline would be required to repay the funds she had taken from Leora's inheritance. Marin, sitting beside her mother, stared in shock. She had never understood why her mother had always acted the way she did toward Leora, but the truth now hit her like a wave. The luxurious clothes, the gadgets, the trips, they had all been paid for using money that belonged to Leora. Marin's eyes filled with tears as she realized her comfortable life had been built on lies and theft. She had never truly known her family, and the realization shattered her. Leora felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. She didn't rejoice in Caroline's downfall, but she felt a deep sense of justice. Finally, the years of manipulation, fear, and control were over. The house that had felt like a prison suddenly seemed lighter, as if the walls themselves had been waiting for this moment. Soline stood beside Leora, offering a comforting hand. Leora knew she was safe now, under someone who genuinely cared, and that her parents' wishes would finally be honored. Caroline's power had crumbled, and the truth was undeniable. For the first time in years, Leora could imagine a life that belonged to her, not one stolen by someone else. She understood that justice wasn't just about punishment, it was about reclaiming what was rightfully hers, and finally having a chance to breathe, to heal, and to move forward. Leora stepped into Soline's home for the first time, carrying only a small bag of clothes and a heart full of cautious hope. The house smelled warm and welcoming, filled with soft light and the quiet hum of life. Soline showed her to a room that had been prepared just for her, with a neatly made bed, books on the nightstand, and a window that looked out onto a small garden. For the first time in months, Leora felt a sense of peace she hadn't known she could have. Soline didn't overwhelm her with questions or rules. She simply offered kindness and patience, allowing Leora to settle in at her own pace. Meals were shared at a table where conversation flowed naturally, and laughter came easily. It was strange to feel this kind of care, to realize someone genuinely wanted her safe and happy. Leora began to understand that she didn't have to live in fear anymore, that life could be gentle and fair. At night, Leora lay in her new bed, the soft sheets against her skin. She thought of all the years of control, fear, and isolation she had endured under Caroline. But now those memories felt smaller, like shadows she could finally move past. The fear that had kept her awake for nights disappeared, replaced by a quiet relief. She had survived, and the person who had caused her so much pain was finally facing the consequences of her actions. Days passed, and Leora slowly began to reclaim the pieces of herself that had been buried. She read, wrote, and even started planning for her future. She laughed with Soline, shared stories about her parents, and learned what it felt like to be truly loved and safe. Fate, which had seemed cruel for so long, had finally turned in her favor. Leora realized she could finally live, not just survive. And for the first time since the accident, she went to sleep feeling secure, knowing justice had been done and a new life awaited her.